sweet time. You need not hurry. Oh, you're looking incredible. You're the bomb. And me, I'm kind of like your dad. And a little like your mom. There are no monsters here. Hey, wait, look over there. I was just kidding. Don't be scared. And
Welcome,
when
everyone,
you're
to the
turned
Retro
this
Pool Guy
game off
podcast.
in
I'm
the
your
real
host,
world
the
once
Retro Pool Guy.
again, you won't
And
have
as
to
always,
play.
I'm joined here with
When
my
you
good buddy and friend,
try to
Nick the Drunken
pretend,
Beard. How you doing,
'cause
Nick?
I'll be
Pretty
right
good. Suffering again with one of your
holding
choices.
your hand.
Oh, come on. It wasn't so bad, was it?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, we're going to be talking about Skull Monkeys for the PlayStation 1 today. But before we get into that, I got a really special guest that I'm really excited to have on today. Let me introduce you to the lead developer for the new game coming out called the Nemots, Derek Laporte. How you doing, Derek?
Hey, I'm pretty good there, Derek. How are you?
Yes, we share the same name. I'm sure this won't get confusing for the listeners at all. It's
Yeah.
kind of ironic also that your last name is Laporte because I actually went to Laporte Elementary School here in Texas. So I just
Oh,
thought that was kind
wow.
of ironic. Yeah, you have a school named after you, so feel proud.
Yeah, wow. It was probably named after me before I was even born, I'm assuming. They just knew I would be coming eventually one day into the world.
You got it, man. All right, so let's take a few minutes to get to know you, Derek. My first question for you is, what got you into gaming? Where did it all begin for you?
Oh man, I mean, I've got like there's a photo of me at 2 years old, where I or I guess actually a little younger than two, like maybe one and a half. I don't know. Back then they count the months of your your life, so
Oh, I
I'm
know a
probably
little
like
something about
18
that.
months or something. But I'm like, because I can't even sit up, so they've got me propped up against a pillow, and in my hands I'm holding a Intellivision controller, and I mean, like things would just beep and like flashes of light across the screen. I didn't know what I was doing, that young, but um, I mean, ever since then, I've always played video games, and I really got into kind of working on them and coming up, like designing them somewhat. I didn't really get into coding as much until later in my life, but I did do uh, a mud back in
Hmm.
the late '90s. I was working on a Fallout mud, which predated the Fallout video game series actually. Um, but yeah, I got my hand on like doing level designing through that, and so once that happened, then I was just all about like trying every game that's out there and making sure I don't miss anything. Um,
So the Intellivision, was that your first console?
yeah,
Then
Intellivision was my first console. It was interesting because my path through consoles is kind of like the I was always playing on the not popular consoles. So like the Intellivision, of course, was the same time as the Atari, right, which was enormously more popular. But I also had a CDI in the '90s as opposed to the Sega CD, um,
Hmm.
which was So I was always going through the path of like the edge case consoles and stuff. But yeah, but still like I think some of the best consoles were the ones that like weren't that popular. Like the Sega Saturn is probably my favorite console if I had to pick. Just because it was so ahead of its time. But yeah, that was on an Intellivision anyway when I was two. Yeah.
so do you still have consoles now, or are you much of a collector?
I have so I mean back at the house in Florida I've still got all of those initial consoles. I don't think I've ever sold one.
Good
I
man.
yeah, I still have the CDI there, but the disc tray doesn't work. So you can only kind of play one, like can't you can really only play the game that's inside of it already. um but but yeah, I have pretty much almost everything. I eventually one day I do plan on acquiring some of those that I missed, like the Neo Geo and the TurboGrafx, and
Excellent. So you kind of mentioned it before, but so when exactly did you decide that you wanted to be a game developer? Like, what was it that really set it in stone for you?
yeah. It was like it was. So I'll go into it a little more. Like it was level designing that Fallout Mud game. It was done in what was at the time called like a circle mud. So it wasn't programming per se, right? Because you're not you really kind of have like a thing in which you just do like you say, okay, this is going to be the room text, this is going to be the room description. um, but designing that, I remember because basically I was doing a real high level uh, in-game level. So um, the level was like based on 3 Mile Island, and I had like a death trap that was in it, um, that involved like swimming through water, and you had to go up and get air in these different air bubbles, and then if you moved past those rooms to the end, then it would just you would just die. And it was people who were like they'd spent a lot of time collecting a lot of things in the game. And I remember talking to one of the devs there about it, and I was like, "Is this too harsh? Is this like is this too much?" And he was like, "No, it should even be harder on them." Um, and so then I think I think from that moment I really started thinking a lot more about like those kinds of design questions. Um, and I still don't. I still think that it shouldn't have been that hard on them, but definitely that got me in the frame of mind of designing games and everything.
Right. So, what was like the first game that you developed, like solidly? Like, I know you're working on Nemots now, but was there another game that you fully developed, like Nemots, or was it just
So
that?
so I did a solo dev on a game in like 2016. um, I had kind of been, before that, I had kind of been doing things of like, a lot of games have level designers and stuff like that, and then you can kind of, so I'd been doing a lot of that kind of stuff. But I finally decided, okay, I'm going to learn how to code and just do everything myself. Um, and it took me, I guess it was like 6 or 7 months in like 2016, and I made a mobile game, and I completely done in Unity, and it was kind of like Crossy, kind of like Crossy Road, but it was about the election at the time, and it was called Trumpy Road, and the
Mhm.
lead character was you played Donald Trump, and you were and like with Crossy Road you jump across the road and everything, so you would jump across the road but you would build like a wall section behind you.
Of
um,
course.
and so the cars, so as you go across, the cars on the road would then crash into the wall that you just built, and they'd honk and like set on fire or something. And I really, what was fun about it was the being able to do that, and then like this kind of like seeing the destruction that you left in your wake was kind of cool, and something that wasn't in Crossy Road, obviously. Um, but I did that, and it was fun, and it has a ending that I don't think anybody's ever made it to, because it has like an email address to like email if you make it to the end, and then I send you something, but nobody nobody has completed it
Is
yet
is that
that
game
I know of.
still is this still available? Like, is that something someone can download today?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. The last time I updated it on Android, it's been a while ago. So I think that because like I kind of I've been doing other stuff, but what they do is they required, I think it was moving up to 64-bit you had to do, and you had to do all this other kind of stuff. And so I would usually like, okay, I'm going to dedicate a weekend eventually and do that. But the last time I tried to play it like that, yeah, I mean, it's still up. It's just I don't know if it's even in a playable state at this point, because it's practically a dead game from 2016.
I'm gonna have to look into that because that sounds hilarious to me. I
Yeah,
would definitely try that, and
I'll
I love a
update it
good
for you.
challenge. I love a good challenge. So if it's difficult, then bring it on. I say. All right, so let's get into what you're working on right now. And I'm pretty excited for this game because I was a big fan of Magic the Gathering. I know Nick was too, and the Nemots works a little something like that, right? So how
Yeah,
did the Nemots come to be?
yeah. So it basically comes down from a meme. There was a meme, right, which was the Taco Cat meme. Like same forwards as it is backwards. It's also a palindrome, I believe, is what those are called. But uh, I really kind of took that to heart, of the fact that you could have like a item and an animal crossed together. And I said, well, is there more funny combinations than just a taco and a cat? Um, and so I was like, well, what I should do is I should just, list, a bunch of items and a bunch of animals, and then put them in a randomizer and see what comes out. Just different combinations that you could get. And so it kind of came from like that, right? Like, see, and so one of them was like Swiss Army goat and stuff like that. And coming across something like that, I was like, wow, I was like, there's something here that's kind of interesting. um and so I decided that, well, I was always going to make like a card game with it, because I always thought that card games could be really interesting if you have a card that nobody else really has, as far as what its mechanical abilities are. And then, particularly, if that card can be damaged or like leveled up, or stuff like that, can also make it kind of balance it out a little bit, right? Because in a lot of these card games, when something's imbalanced, right, before they ban it, they always like limit it to like a copy of one in your hand. So I'm like, if everything's like only one of these exists out there, um, but that was so I kind of started thinking like, well, it would be really interesting if each item has a mechanic and each animal has a mechanic, and you're getting like this combination that's like one in like something crazy, like one in 1.2, 1.8 million, something like that, right?
Mhm.
um then there's always that quality of that early magic, right, when somebody's plopping down a card, and it's, and you've never seen it before. I used to
Yeah,
love that.
I've experienced that a few times playing Magic for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's still something even these days. Like, you can kind of experience in Magic a little bit, because if you're newer to it and you don't know all of the mechanics, like somebody plops down a flying creature, and you're like, wait, and they're like, okay, this goes over your animals, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
My friends ruin all these games for me just because they'll go through and like min max every single card game. I'm like, no, it's not fun. Stop
Yeah.
wrecking me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those things. And I think that, like, particularly with something like Magic, there's so many open possibilities with it that hopefully everybody doesn't end up making just the same deck. You know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, really, like, I kind of like basically I developed the story kind of around it, and then the whole idea kind of just started growing. It was initially just going to be like a small game, just for um, just for like a small group of people, really. But then it ended up being the kind of the main purpose of what the team was doing. So as that happened, then a lot of these other things came into it. And I mean, I I decided to pull from almost every TCG out there something. We have a rose system that we're going to start doing. That's kind of like a versus system. If you guys ever played
Oh,
that.
I played the crap out of Versus.
Yeah, yeah. So we've got like all kinds of like stuff like that, right? It's kind of going to be in it. But really, one of the other things too that to me was a big thing was there's there's so many, like, it almost feels like fantasy is kind of the default for card games.
Mm-hmm.
So really having something that is also uniquely themed was kind of interesting to me. And so this is set in like the 80s in like a mall in America. And so basically we say it's like Pokemon meets Stranger Things, as far as like thematics go. Um, and to me that's like super interesting, as far as like all of the possibilities of that. And then being able to really kind of play on this retro items vibe with, like, like you got like a keytar as like an item in it.
That
Amazing.
that's
Best
definitely
instrument ever
what
made.
that's definitely what hooked me when I saw you guys posting things on Twitter was the throwback to the '80s and the retro gaming. I mean, the retro pool guy, obviously, right? I'm like, this is something I want to look into. Then I find out, oh, this is like a trading card game. This is even better. So you said that people would have their own cards, like there's only going to be one type. So how does that work for people getting into the game? Like, will you buy packs of cards and then like there's bonus cards, or kind
Yeah.
of explain that a little bit for
So
the listener?
that's a good question. So yeah, so basically there will be like starter decks, right? Which there's going to be multiples in that. And kind of the normal, like 3 to 4 copies of a particular creature. It's Nemots, we call them. All the creatures in our thing are called Nemots. There will also be, so also spells will be also something that there will be like spells packs, and you'll be able to like have multiples of those as well. But beyond that, right, beyond the starter decks and those in the free deck, and because we do have like a free to play version of it for people. Um, but beside those, what will happen is as you play, you'll get like a drop, uh, which is of a creature that you can create, basically a Nemot that you can make, and then you'll go in, and then it'll be kind of like it'll be a randomized Nemot. It'll have a certain, like, it'll be like a legendary or epic or what have you. So you'll already kind of know the rarity of it. But then uh, when it gets randomized, then you see like what mechanics it has, like the mechanics and kind of the stats and all that stuff. And then as you go through the levels and level it up, then it will unlock those mechanics. So you can also, like get rid of that card, and you say, oh, this is not really, it's an RNG thing, right? So you could be like, I don't, this doesn't play anywhere near what I'm planning on doing with my decks in the future. And if that happens, then you can, burn that one, and then you can try RNG again to get a different one. But the idea is to get the player to progress and level these Nemots up, because then as they level up too, right? I mean, it's already like I said, that number is crazy, right? It's already a super rare thing to have a particular type of Nemot. So it gets even more even more rare as you consider the fact that you can level these things up. It's interesting because it's a process that I feel like is natural and makes complete sense, but I don't see even many of the new TCGs doing it. Like, I don't know if you guys have played Marvel's Snap, but
Haven't.
Haven't
yeah,
played it, but I've
Mm-mm.
definitely seen a lot of people posting about that
I
one.
played several matches this morning, actually.
yeah, it's a good game and everything, but I do think that, like, one of the things that I think that I know could be better, that I feel could be better, is the fact that all you do is you level up the rarity of the card in your collection, right? You don't it doesn't get anything else other than that, other than the customizability, not the customizability, the what is it, the you get like a frame,
Yeah,
frame break, and
it makes it shiny, basically. The higher you go,
right.
and the more shiny cards you have, the more cards you unlock.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing because it keeps you going, that kind of thing. But I'm like, if you do that kind of around leveling up, and if you said, okay, well, I have to like get this card to a certain level in order to unlock the ability that's on it, then you would be incentivized to continue to play that card, and continue to progress in the game.
So the leveling up, how will that work? You level it up by playing the card and having the
Yeah,
card survive through the match.
yeah, exactly. Playing and winning, essentially. You can lose the card, right? So you can. So for instance, you put the Nemot out there, it can get destroyed. But as long as you win the match, then it will still level up, right? Um, there is the opposite of leveling up, that we have too, called condition rating, right? And this again comes from the physical card game, right? Trying to emulate the physical card game as much as possible. The early days, actually still to this day, obviously
Hmm.
all physical cards have a condition rating, um, and you would not want to play with them like without a sleeve or something, because if you do, then they're going to go down in value, just based upon the during play they get shuffled, the corners get messed up, stuff like that.
Greasy
So
fingers. Yeah.
yeah, greasy fingers. Yeah, so in order to avoid that, you put them in a sleeve and stuff like that, or just frankly never play with them. but 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 with ours, basically, if you win, then it doesn't take condition rating damage. If you lose, then it takes a condition rating damage. Now it can be still repaired, and there's still methods of fixing that kind of thing. But again, it's all about risk and reward, right? Do I risk putting it out there? Should I have that as a consideration as a player? And I think it makes an interesting consideration as a player, right? All these kind of player choice, and then adding something to the player choice that's um, that that that's risk and reward based.
Definitely. So this will be a player versus player type game, or will there be like a be able to play against an AI type option?
Yeah, so it'll be primarily player versus player, just because for the rewards kind of the rewards basis, you kind of have to be playing against other players. there will be like obviously like a against AI kind of like a practice type of match and everything, because there's a lot of systems in it that the players have to get used to. There's certain additional resources in it that that aren't really in that many TCGs. I'll give you an example. The time in the game is actually a resource. So you have a clock, and it's similar to like a chess clock, um, in that right now it's set to 3 minutes. This is probably not going to be the final time that it's going to be at, but just in testing, it's at 3 minutes, and you have like a 5 second delay before the clock starts counting down, and you have basically 3 minutes to win the game, right? 3 active minutes of you playing in order to win the game. Um, and But there will be cards that can like add time, like add 5 seconds. They can also subtract time, like subtract 5 seconds. Um, and so and so it'll be like, again, this thing where it's time as a resource, um, in the game that players kind of have to like really play with in order to understand how it works, and then to get the to really start to be able to like time themselves pretty well, right? Because starting out, you may your moves may be more obvious, right? Like I can only play this card, so I need to take the minimum amount of time at the very beginning so that I have more time later when more of the board state is there, and there's more cards in play and stuff.
I like that. I like that because I've played some Magic games that have just gone on for way too long. I don't
Yeah.
know if anybody else experienced that, but playing Magic the Gathering, I've had a few matches where it was just like, I can't believe we're still going. Like neither one of us can win. It's a total stalemate. So,
Yeah. And I mean,
what?
it's an interesting decision because, like obviously Hearthstone and a whole bunch of others, like they do it in a way in which your turn is timed, right? And so you can always feel time pressure on every turn, whereas this one is a slow ramp, right? You're probably not going to feel that time pressure until your clock is beneath a minute, and then you're like, okay, I really gotta concern myself with time now.
So, wh- how can people get into this? Like, is the alpha testing still open, or you closed on that, or you're not taking any more people for that, or are they gonna
They
have to wait until the game is released, or
Yeah, there's still a wait list, and we will start getting people kind of into it as we ramp up the testing and ramp up the servers. Right now, it is a small group that it's testing with. It's like basically 100 people, but uh, we are launching within the next few months, so that ramping will start to happen fairly quickly. So they can get on like the waiting list for that. They can, again, there will be a free to play version of it, so they will be able to, once it like even launches, if they just want to wait for that, they can wait for that, and then check it out when it launches. And it's going to be initially on um, PC and Mac, and then we're gonna have it on mobile pretty quickly after that.
That's great to
nice?
hear.
What's the target for launch? Are you allowed to say, or is that still up in the air?
So I've been saying the next few months. I am thinking, here's hoping the next couple of months. I do think that's something we could reach, um, but yeah, I also at the same time I do know that with all the progress on these things, you get estimates from people and they just blow through those estimates.
Yeah,
so so I am always hesitant with like dates or anything like that,
As
but
someone trying to get a firewall implementation put in, I estimated it would be done in February. so I
How
understand.
close are you now?
Oh, you know what's great? Barely started.
Yeah.
It was
Time, man.
pushed back to this next February, surprisingly enough.
Like I said, time is a resource, like in the game and in life, right? Like it's
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yep.
All right. Well, Nick, do you have any questions for our guest here, Derek?
No, I actually excited to see it. And if you want some crazy card game testers, I know a couple.
Excellent. We sure do. Yeah, we can as many as possible.
Oh yeah, that's all he does. And a couple of them do in their free time and during work. Surprisingly enough, game
People play
accountants.
games
Awesome.
during work? Who would have thought?
Yeah, right.
No one does that, right?
They bring out the Excel spreadsheets and like go down the list. That's makes not playing games with them fun sometimes. Anyways,
So Derek, tell us, where can our listeners find you and the Nemots? Are you guys on Twitter, Discord? You want to share those?
Yeah. So we are on Twitter. We're on Discord. They could check out too the Nemots.com. That's our website. It actually will have like it has the link to all of those other places, so it makes a nice hub, so to speak. But yeah, we do have like a Discord server. We've got like a Twitter. Um, all of it pretty much the Nemots, all the same.
Kept it simple. I like that. The
Yeah.
Nemots. So if
Yeah.
you folks out there are interested, please go check out the Nemots.com. Especially if you're into trading card games like Magic, Pokemon, stuff like that. This is something you're gonna want to check out. I know I'm pretty excited for it. I get to be one of the alpha testers. This will be my first time testing a game, and I'm pretty stoked. So I'm really
and,
looking forward to it.
and can you just spell it out for everyone, just so everyone knows exactly?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's Thenemots. I almost had a hard time spelling there for a second there, but yeah,
Awesome.
like Nemo and then TS basically. That kind of help. That
That
kind
works.
of helped me spell it.
Wanted to make sure that as people are like, all right, how do you spell Nemots again? Do you carry the no?
Right.
Is there an umlaut in there? No.
All right. Thank you so much, Derek, for giving us all that information on the game. Like I said, man, I'm really excited to test it and stuff. So I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for all the questions, and having me too. If I don't get a chance to say before the end, thanks for having me.
Oh, you definitely
Oh,
all the time, man.
all right. So you guys ready to talk about some Skull Monkeys for the
Mm.
PlayStation 1? Huh?
Oh yeah, what an
I know Nick
enjoyable
probably has a lot to
experience.
say.
Oh, that's stupid. Actually, I even still have it loaded up here.
All right. So for our listeners, Skull Monkeys, released in February of 1998, is on the PlayStation 1, a platformer developed by the Neighborhood, and is actually a sequel to the game of the same name, the Neighborhood. The Neighborhood was a graphic adventure, is what they called it, but it's point and click type game. I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with those. But they changed directions on this one, and they went with a side-scrolling platformer. At the time, though, 3D games were becoming a thing. Like that was, you know, what are we like Gex, Mario 64, stuff like that. But the creator there, Doug, excuse me if I screw up this last name, Doug Tenaple. At the time, he said, yeah, 3D games were popular, but he didn't like them. He didn't think they were going to go anywhere. So he made it a 2D game. I think he was wrong. Uh,
Yeah, a bit.
so what caught my eye about this game is everything in it is done with clay. It's all claymation. The for the enemies and characters, they actually took a bunch of old toys and they just put clay around them, and made these awesome little characters called the Skull Monkeys. And you play as Clayman. And the object of the game is to defeat Prague. I believe that's his name. The final boss. He lands on this. They did some weird names for these
Hmm.
worlds, like Eidsnick is the planet that you're on. Uh, but also all the cutscenes are done with the stop motion play animation. So it was really a beautiful game.
And possibly lots of drugs.
And probably a lot of drugs were involved while making this. So first, we're going to cover three things about the game. We're going to talk about the music, talk about the graphics, and then we talk about our gameplay and gameplay experiences. So first, I really want to talk about the music because I loved the music in this game.
That was the best
Uh,
part about the game.
yeah, at the if you as y'all heard in the beginning of the episode on the intro there, that was actually the music for the bonus room. There's a bonus room in each level, and that song it had me rolling. I gotta be honest, it was hilarious. I didn't expect that at all. I actually had to sit there and listen to it. Like I just stopped playing for a minute and just let the
I
game run so I could
I
listen
had
to
the
the
exact
song.
same. I'm like, I since I was playing this one in an emulator because I didn't want to get my PS2 up and running for this. I was just like, is that music playing in the background from like a YouTube video or what is going on? Because it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it's pretty good. He talks about being like your mom and your dad and how you're safe in here, and it's just really
I'm a
funny writing.
father figure. I'm like, okay.
So, here's a little something for you. The music was actually done by Terry Scott Taylor. If some of you might know offhand, maybe you don't, but have you guys ever heard of the Roots? No, anyone?
Nope, nope. I'm bad with.
Nobody knows the Roots. Am I the only one who's hip?
Oh, mm,
The Roots.
the
The
roots.
Roots.
I
Yeah,
thought you
the
said
Roots.
root.
Oh yeah, I've heard the
They're
Roots.
the Roots. They're also I believe it's the Jimmy Fallon show now. They're
Yeah,
Yeah.
the band there. Well, Terry Scott Taylor, he's in that band, and he's the one who did all the music for this game.
nice.
So, any fans out there of the Roots, there you go. You're definitely gonna enjoy this music. Uh,
Possibly the only thing about it.
music is good. I have no complaints about the music. From start to finish, even the menu music is good. I mean, everything fits the game. Is perfect. Nick, you got some opinions on the music?
No, I mean it's very good. I mean it's CD music quality, so we have some of the first nice digital music out of our gameplays. But yeah, no, it's great and it fits the mood theme really well. And of course the bonus room music takes the cake, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think the only one that's probably next to that is I believe it's called the Worm Graveyard level. That music was pretty good too. So, talk about the graphics. Like I said before, everything in this game is done with clay and stop motion. And even today, I think this game really holds up really well. Like I was playing it on my original PS1. I bought an original copy off of eBay, and I paid way too much for this game. Which that's something we should probably talk about. Is why these games are getting so expensive. Because this was kind of ridiculous. I had to pay about $70
Oh,
for a copy of this game, and that was the cheapest one I found just because it was a Hollywood rental,
oh,
game. So it had, the Hollywood, sticker on the disc and stuff that you can't take off. So, a lot of collectors, they don't want that. So
yeah.
I guess it was discounted, but this game is most of them are over $100.
And now you know why I don't collect games and only the hardware.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I feel like the game was worth it because it was actually really good. Uh, it holds up
Mm,
really well. There's a lot of PS1 games you play now, and they just don't look as good anymore. You know what I mean? And this one though, really held up. It was really nice. The backgrounds are beautiful. The levels, they're all unique and different. Like, I was really impressed with the graphics and how it was all done, and the animations with the characters, the different enemies. Really, just kind of mind blowing that it still looks so good all these years later. I mean, it was released in '98, so it's over 20 years old now, and it still looks pretty fresh. Nick, how do you feel about the graphics of this one?
I honestly don't have the same opinion on the graphics side. I mean, the full motion videos are all really good. Because I mean they're full motion video where they did claymation animation, but I've never been a huge fan of the digitizing of sprites and then putting in, because it just kind of makes things feel a little clunkier. But let's be honest, this was kind of the graphics of, say, Donkey Kong at the time as well, country for the Super Nintendo. So seeing that kind of quality on such a powerful machine. But the big thing uh they did abuse or wanted to show off a lot was a lot of things in the foreground and the background as like different layers, which you couldn't really do on the older consoles. So they really took advantage of that. Um, I the game's graphics are, yeah, I mean, overall it's okay, I guess. I'm literally playing it while we're talking here.
He's playing
Um,
it right now.
yeah, I am literally playing it right
try
now.
not try not to bang your head against the wall.
Oh boy, it's we'll talk about that part. But overall, I do like all the extra animations, the little jokes and stuff that they added. It's pretty good. This was a co-partnered with DreamWorks, right? So they
Yes, that
had
is correct.
a lot of influence. It looks like on character design. I
Yeah,
see.
the
So
cutscenes are really good. They're pretty funny. They look good. It's like watching a little claymation movie.
I mean, it's
Uh,
fun, especially funny if you're like 12 years old. But
yeah, yeah. The Did you see the beans
yeah, yeah,
cutscene?
the
Yeah,
beans,
which
the
I
art
thought that was a
jokes.
cool way to introduce some of the items. You're talking about the tutorials and how they should play into the games. I thought
Yeah,
that was kind of a cool way to introduce the items that you're gonna use. Because that was one of them. It was called the fart.
yeah. The
Pretty
fart that
cool.
comes out of the top of your head is one
Hmm.
of your weapons, supposedly.
And it makes a clone of yourself. Yes.
Yes. Um, but back to the graphics. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's on like the level of pretty much all the other 2D platformers at the time. But the big thing is they did take the time out and, mocap each one of these with claymation. So I'll give them props to that.
Derek, let me ask you, how do you feel about claymation graphics compared to, let's say, pixelated graphics for a platformer? Which one would you rather work with?
Yeah, I mean, I I kind of like the look of claymation. I think that the I think that the movement of it is super important in a lot of these early pixelated kind of claymation games didn't quite get it so well. Uh, I did like, because I mean this was a trend, a little bit of a trend, wasn't it? Like during the '90s, probably around the time that this came out, because there was like Clay Fighters.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Clay
Uh,
Fighters,
there
Donkey Kong
was
Country, of course, was one. Several.
yeah, there was even I mentioned CDI earlier, but there was a CDI game that was like that too. It was like Laser Lords, I think it was called, and it had claymation characters in it. But it's no, I mean, I think it's an interesting choice and decision. I I think that its staying power isn't that good because there are some limitations. Um, more so, I think there's more limitations to it than there is to pixel art, for instance. Um, but then you have to almost use the goofy vibe always, right?
Yeah. Or-
Like you can never do a serious claymation game.
no.
No, it's
Mm,
definitely gonna feel very cartoonish. No matter how serious you try to make it, the claymation always comes out that way. You're definitely right about that.
I think the biggest thing that it suffers in gameplay wise, especially when you go to a platformer, is your accuracy on jumping and whatnot. As you know, the hitboxes are no longer really tied to the character. It feels a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I have played Neverhood, and obviously it doesn't suffer that much from that because it's a point and click kind
Mm.
of deal. So you don't have that I recall, you don't have any jumping situations. I'm sure there's probably some jumping level in there that I'm totally forgetting, but
Well, jumping is a big part of the gameplay. So
Oh
let's talk
boy.
about the gameplay for Skull Monkeys. Oh boy, where do
Uh,
we begin, Nick? Where do we
uh,
even begin?
well, when they said platforming, they really meant platforming with this one. That's for sure.
Yeah, this game was not easy. I did beat it. I'm very proud to say that I was able to beat this game all the way through. For those who don't know, how we do this on the podcast is we don't use any cheats, we don't use walkthroughs, we don't use guides. We play the games like they originally came to us. The most we do is look up the original manual because that's all we had as kids. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of internet access. Well, there might have been a little bit in '98,
But yeah,
but you know, you get the point here. We try to keep it original. So I'm very proud to say that I beat this game because it was a severe pain in the ass. Uh, the the first few levels, it's pretty simple. They kind of ease you into it. It's not too bad, nothing too crazy, you know. But then once you really start getting into it, it takes a turn, and my goodness, it's
my
just so rough. Like I know I
you
died at least 500 times playing this game.
you get
At
concerned when they're like, "Oh yeah, these are lives," and they're just giving them to you like candy at the beginning. You're like, "Why are you giving me so many of these?" Well, you're gonna
yeah,
use them.
you come out of those bonus rooms with a whole bunch of lives and extra weapons and stuff, and it's like, well, this is yeah, you're gonna need it for sure. Thankfully, unlike a couple games from the past, they do have a password system.
Which is
Uh,
such a cop out because the system had memory cards.
yeah, I kind of wondered about that myself. It's like, why do the password system when you could just have, you know, memory cards were a thing, and they'd been around for a little while at this point. Why not just use that? But you know what? I'll take it for this game because without it, it would have been impossible to beat this game. It's so large. There's over 90 levels, close
Mm,
to 100 if you count all the bonus levels and stuff. Uh,
everything's a
so
one hit kill.
yeah, everything's a one hit kill. You do get an item that's a halo that'll give you an extra hit, but they get harder and harder to find as you go throughout the game. So you have to be almost perfect to beat this game. Like the bosses, for instance. Okay, the first boss really easy. You just he rolls on the screen, you jump on his head. You
Three
know,
times.
yeah, not very difficult. Okay, but then I got to this giant crab boss. Okay, and you're like in this. You're basically you're on a rail that can only go up and down. You're in a turret, and you shoot at it, and he has like a claw, okay, that he sticks out to hit you, and he only goes in three spots. It's either up, down, or middle. And at first, it felt like a complete guess, like it was just so random, and I couldn't figure it out. It took me a while to figure out that he uses a smaller claw first to point which way he's gonna go, and then you can avoid it. But one mistake and you're done. Like you start over on the bosses. You have to be perfect. You can't take any damage. The help me out here, Nick. What was the head? What's his name? Should have wrote
Oh,
it in
I
my notes.
don't know, man. I didn't get obviously that far. I
Uh, So
It's
one
on
of
the
the
Slacker.
developers, and maybe Derek, maybe you can do this with one of your games in the future. He put his head on one of the bosses, so it's basically his face, and he shoots his eyeballs out at you, and he shoots these flames out of his mouth, and then you have to wait for
Head
like
Joe is the
Fat Joe head, right?
Head Joe, I think is just
Head
what it's
Joe.
called.
I
Joe.
call him Fat Head because he was
Yeah,
difficult.
Joe Head Joe.
And Joe Head Joe, thank you, Nick.
Yep.
Uh, so you have to dodge the eyeballs, dodge the fireballs, and then wait for the little snowball thing to come out. Then you can jump on his head, switch over to the other side. And
It's a very disturbing boss, might I add.
yeah, it was super creepy. And of course, each time you hit him, it speeds up and it gets faster and faster. So you can get it down to one hit left on him, but if he hits you one time, back, start over, do it again. Spent a lot of time on that boss. It was pretty difficult, but believe it or not, he wasn't the worst one. There was a wizard, and
Yeah.
yeah, the wizard. I spent a good
Monkey Mage.
monkey mage. I spent about an hour or so trying to beat this guy. He stands in a middle platform. You have three platforms on each side, small ones that spin in a circle. So he has a shield around him. You can't hit him until he drops the shield. If you miss, he fires a staff in the air and blows away one of your platforms. So you have to time it perfectly each time and hit him before he blows away the platform. Otherwise, it just gets more and more difficult. Uh, Nick, I don't think you got that
No,
far, right?
no, definitely not that far. But
Yeah.
I did watch the battles before because I wanted to make sure I got to see some of the ending bosses. And I don't know what the big fuss is. I'm watching this guy here. He does it in 3 jumps. Uh,
I guarantee you that was not his first try. Let me tell you.
yeah, I'm sure.
You showed me that. I'm like, yeah, of course there's no damage because if you take one hit, you have to start over. I would edit it like that myself too. Uh, but what caught me off guard with these bosses was why was the last boss the easiest boss? Like Clog,
Yeah, I was noticing that.
yeah, super simple. Like he's just on the ceiling and you're just down below riding this little thing and you just catch the little ball things and shoot them back up at him. I mean, compared to the crab guy and Showhead and the wizard, like he felt like a breeze. Like I was like, oh man, that was so great. So I beat him, and then I thought that was it. I was like, well, there's the final boss. This game is over. I put in the work. I can't believe it. And then no, you get another cutscene, and then it takes you to a level called Engine Number 9. And that's basically the machine that he was building throughout the game. You have to go inside it and beat another 5 levels. And this is where I spent the majority of the time trying to beat this game because there's these they're like okay, everybody's played Mega Man 3. I'm sure
Hmm.
everyone out there has played Mega Man 3. You remember those little disappearing platforms that
Oh
make the
yeah.
little weird noise? Okay. So this is it kind of reminded me of that except 100 times worse. All right. You have to jump on these little they look like the old school, like, steampunk style light bulb things, okay? And they activate these platforms, and then the platform once you jump off of that light bulb, the platforms only stay on for maybe, like, 8 seconds, alright? Which doesn't sound too difficult, except for the fact that you have to activate 1 set of platforms, jump across, activate another set of platforms, and then jump back onto the first set that you activated to make it up the next set of platforms. Does that sound
Yeah.
confusing? Because it
Yeah.
yeah, because it was. You have to figure out the path to take. It's not easy at all. I spent a good 3, I wanna say 3 or 4 days on just the engine number 9 level. trying to get through this, especially the last one, level 5. The jumps were just absurd, and this is how I know I died hundreds of times because I kept having to continue, and it's just funny because like the enemies in those levels are a breeze. Like there's really nothing too difficult about them.
I mean, all
But
that pretty much all the enemies in the game are a breeze. It's really the platforming is a little jank.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely a little squirrely trying to jump around. But I don't know. Whoever came up with the idea for those lighting up platforms that disappear, you're a monster. I just want to say that you're an absolute monster. But I did get through it and I beat it, and I'm very proud of myself. I feel like I could take on any game after playing that. Like it was just so ridiculous.
Do have to say, probably one of the most satisfying things about the game is the check marks or the checkpoints.
Oh yeah,
It,
the
though
checkpoint.
those things are very satisfying to jump on.
Yeah,
Mm,
especially if you do three. Did you do the three jumps in a row? So you
I
get the
did.
different little enemy where he
Yeah.
kicks his heels on the third jump. Did a really good job of stuff like that. The little stuff uh, really makes the game.
Mhm.
Uh,
Oh, and they're basically like a little ball. When you jump on them, it turns into like a bird that makes a little caw sound, and then you can keep jumping on them. Anyways,
yes.
that's for people that haven't played the game, it's very very satisfying compared to jumping on the skull monkeys.
Well, what I thought was cool about jumping on the skull monkeys themselves is how they explode out into the screen, almost kind of giving it a 3D effect. Same thing when
Yeah,
if you get hit, you also explode and it kind of goes out to the screen. I thought it was pretty cool, but just the gameplay. If you're not ready for a test in your platforming skills, then you don't want to play this. It's very
not
frustrating.
even just platforming skills. You're like testing your bad platforming skills. Oh god. That's like just the platforms are and the like jump boxes are just a little wonky. I also found sometimes you weren't sure if some things were in the foreground or on your plane as well, so you'd like just jump into it and fall down.
Yeah,
Um, that was really annoying. Stuff like that. And that's again why I'm not a huge fan of like the scan in design kind of uh terrains and whatnot. I prefer just pixel art or something in engine versus just basically, here's a picture. Let's make it a solid thing, and hopefully we hit the bounding boxes correctly. Um, and I always seem to have a problem with that. The same problem I always had like with Donkey Kong and stuff as well. Just with the character design. I mean, Mortal Kombat kind of suffers from that too, but since it's a fighting game, you're kind of like hitting each other. So it's not as big of a deal. It just feels slower than, say, a Mario game, right?
yeah,
It's not as
yeah.
fluid.
Yeah, there's definitely some points where you have to take your time and kind of look at things and figure that out. I ran into that too. Like I wasn't sure. Okay, can I jump on this, or is this
Hmm.
something I need to avoid? I definitely want to avoid spikes, that sort of thing. There's even a level where you're like in the sewers and obviously if you go into the sewage stuff, you're dead. So you have to ride these little barrel platforms that come up out of the water. And the way they timed it, you're literally like, you have to time it perfect because the one will completely disappear before the next one pops up. So you have to know. There's a lot of that trial and error
Yeah.
type stuff in this game,
AKA
which
bad game design. I mean, uh,
yeah, you can call it
no,
that.
uh, Derek over here is like, hey, we're gonna play a game. We could play a good game, like Splinter Cell or something. But no, we're gonna play Skull Monkeys, where you're just gonna jump around and die for 2 hours.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like obviously there has to be a certain level of fairness, right?
Yeah,
Otherwise, it feels like the game is working against you. Um, you know, I mean, there is a definition of what a game is. That is, it says a simple task that is done in a extremely difficult way, right? So, like for instance, golf. Anybody can drop ball in a hole,
Hmm.
but if you say, "Oh, go back there, 300 yards and hit it with this stick," then
Now you
suddenly
got a
it
game.
becomes yeah, then suddenly it becomes a game. But um, that being said, it sounds like they're trying to get you to hit it with your hand from that far away. So
Yeah, definitely. You definitely have the trial error, memorize kind of where positioning are. I mean, it's really similar to old Nintendo platformers, like Mega
yeah,
Man and whatnot. But Mega Man does a really good job of introducing like the enemies and how they're going to be kind of laid out and they don't feel too unfair. It's more like Ninja Gaiden where you're not sure where they're going to be, or Castlevania where it's just like they'll pop right in. But fortunately on this, all the enemies are in the exact same spot every time. So you can just memorize where everything's at, which is good, but it's also frustrating on your first playthrough because you're like, I don't know where these are, and it feels unfair when you jump into an area because you're basically jumping in and dying.
Yeah, they it kind of messed up because there's a lot of line jumps through the later levels.
Mm,
There's
yeah,
actually one level where you just go down you- the whole time. Like it's just down, 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 down. But you can't see what's below you, you know? So it's basically like just choose the right path. Hopefully you picked right. If not, go back and start again. That I really wish this game would have had a life bar like Mega Man,
yeah,
or even Ninja Gaiden had a life bar, you know? So you could take hits and then
yeah,
still
yeah.
keep going instead of just the one hit and dead.
That's
That got really
that
annoying.
yeah, that's the biggest challenge versus some of those older, games where it might not have been a fair jump because an enemy was standing there, but at least you're not going to die every time. This one you die every time.
Every time.
Every
A lot
time.
of times.
A lot of
It's
time.
so many times. Oh man.
Oh,
Uh,
what's the difference between the endings with the red checkpoint versus the gray checkpoint? Or
uh, I never got any clarification on that. But some the game did offer a little bit of variety. Some of those red things would take you to a different part of the level.
I
Like
see.
one time, I got in one, and it took me to. You're basically like in a little spaceship, and they changed the game up completely. And you like shoot like these things. You had to like go through like a little maze, basically, and try to get to the end of that. If you died, it just took you back to the default level. But if you made it to the
Ah,
end, you would uh, progress a little further. Which that reminds me of something else that kind of bothered me with this game is when when you first start out, you know, you see Clayman, your character, and he's like a certain size, right? So, proportions, depth perception, whatever. But then it's like when you get into some of the later levels, they it's like they pan the camera out and your character is smaller, and so your jumping is completely thrown off. I don't understand why they did that because like you get so used to playing it one way and then all of a sudden it's like they pan the camera out and you have to rethink about how you make every jump because it just changes the perception. And that's all they did was just like literally it looks like they just pulled the camera back
they
and
probably
so
did that
everything looks
because they wanted to
smaller.
show you more of the level. Because again, talking about those blind jumps, uh, since low resolution, it's really hard. There's not much of the level you can see because your character is very big, and so it doesn't leave a lot of room for to see what's ahead of you. Um, and I'm thinking maybe further on in the development they may have pulled the camera back for that.
Just change their mind in the middle of
I mean, it happens.
I believe it, but man, that was a frustrating part of the game because you just basically had to relearn it on the fly like that, and didn't make the game any easier. I also found out that I didn't get the good ending, so I spent like 2 weeks trying to rush through this game, and then because we don't look anything up for the game, so it wasn't until after I beat it that I found out that you have to get all the little swirly cues uh, in each level. To get to the bonus,
Mm-hmm.
you have to get every single one of those in the game to get the good ending.
No, no.
Yeah, I'm not going back and trying to do that. This game was fun, but just also very frustrating, and I found it kind of difficult. So no,
Well,
no, I'm not doing that. I'll take my bad ending and call it a success.
well, then what are your final thoughts on it
Final
after
thought.
spending 2 weeks killing yourself?
If you like a challenging platformer game and you're into like fart jokes and just being silly stuff, it's definitely a game worth checking out. It is fun. I did have fun with it. But the later levels, it's not for amateurs. Like you're really gonna test yourself. Uh, it's probably one of the hardest games I've ever played. I'll put that out there. It's definitely up there. Uh, Battletoads hard, like just difficult, so difficult in some spots. Like I said, I spent most of the time playing this game out of that 2 weeks was on engine number 9. That last level is where I spent most of my time playing this game. Just
My
to get through those
recommendation,
challenges.
if you're going to play through it, do it on an emulator with save state. That way, you can at least retry your jumps and stuff. Because that's going to
Yeah.
be I think the only time you're going to have a pleasurable experience. I don't even know if that's going to be pleasurable. Because you're going to be typing in that code a lot.
Yeah, it
Unfortunately.
sure was.
I mean, been doing it all day. So yeah, that's my thoughts as well. It's just it's good in concept, bad execution, but
Yeah, and if you're a collector out there, be ready to spend some money if you want a physical copy of this game because it's pricey. We talked about that. It's an
mm,
expensive one.
yeah,
Well, all right then. I think we have said enough about Skull Monkeys for today.
possibly too much.
Possibly a little too much. So real quick, let's talk about what game we're gonna do next month, huh?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna spell this one out for you guys, and then Nick, I want to see if you can pronounce it without looking it up. Okay,
Oh god.
here we go. XEXYZ.
Next, Zixi, Zigzig.
It's called Xexes.
I was close. I
Xexes for the
don't.
NES.
I don't think I've ever played it.
All right, this is another platformer, but
My
it's
god.
also don't be scared. It's also a shooter. This game is pretty unique. It's for the NES. It's called Xexes. I finally learned how to say that after about a month of trying to figure it out, and it's pretty good. We're gonna have a lot of fun with this one. I think it's gonna be a lot easier than Skull Monkeys, for sure. But it's a good
Mm,
mix of platforming, RPG, and a shooter, definitely, with some very epic boss battles. It's a good one. You're gonna like it, maybe. We'll see.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting for a good one.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Derek, for being here. One more time, if you just want to give out that website for everyone.
So it's the Nemots, TheNemots.com. Yeah. So thanks for having me, guys.
Oh
And
yeah,
thank
Been
you so
dude.
much for being here, man. And I'm really excited about your game. I can't wait to get into the alpha testing. This is going to be fun. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Nick. As always,
Of
this show
course.
wouldn't be possible without you, my friend. And of course, thank you to all our listeners out there for tuning in. We appreciate you greatly. And if this is your first time listening, go back and check out some of those older episodes. I think you'll find a lot of stuff you'll like there. So thank you to everyone, and as always, please remember the light at the end of the tunnel may be you. Goodbye, everybody.